Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Welcome to the Lore Foundry.
Welcome.
I'm Greg, and this is Daron.
I'm Daron.
Hey, Daron.
Hi.
So today, we're going to be kind of doing a dungeon build, doing both the lore and some of the, figuring out what actually is in there.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we're not drawing a map yet. We're not, putting it to paper. So
I've got paper in front of me.
He's got paper in
I'm
front
putting
of him.
it to paper. Kind of,
but I don't think you're not drawing the layout or anything.
No,
like that.
I meant to do that earlier today when I was at the park, supposed to be reading, but instead I was like, I'm going to bring a notebook and then try to build a dungeon. And then I was like, shit, I have almost no inspiration right now. Maybe I should talk to Greg about this.
Wow.
Oh, we're supposed to record today. Great. Let's build a dungeon on the podcast.
Hey, Greg, just make my dungeon. Hey.
Basically, here's the paint and the canvas. Just go nuts.
So I want to start off by I've kind of struggled sometimes where you get you have so much and you kind of have so much that you need to work on.
Mm-hmm.
Usually when you're I'm going to make a proper dungeon, right? Where it's
Mm-hmm.
you're going to go in, there's going to be all this stuff in there. You want to have all these cool things. You want everything interconnected. I always find it to be a lot harder than I expect because I'm I should be able to just put the thing there and put the thing and then then it'll be all together. And nope, that's not what happens. Normally I kind of, I'm sort of jumping around and I have a hard time getting all the pieces together. And so I did this with a pretty small dungeon that only has 8 rooms. Which
that's the one that we're currently running through.
Yeah. Yep. And I've tried. I've begun the process with making a pretty big dungeon, one that's got. I've been calling it a mega dungeon. It's not really a mega dungeon. It's going to be 3 levels, I think, or so.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty big, fleshed out levels, but only 3, not a million.
Yeah.
And basically, I have a process that I figured out, a workflow, which I guess it's still experimental, but I figure that I might as well share it with you and all of you as the audience, because you might find it useful, because that's how I think about this now. How I think about doing this, the design process of doing a dungeon.
Any dungeon you come across, really.
Yep.
Okay, so what's step 1?
Okay, so there's let me give you some philosophy behind it, I guess.
Okay.
It's sort of I do it this way because I'm figuring out what are the things that I need to know before I can move on to the next step.
Okay.
It's basically how I do it. And so, because before I would start doodling the map, and then I'd be I could have a thing here and a thing here. And then I would have what do I put in this empty room? Or oh man, I wanted to put this thing here. Now I can't fit it.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have sort of that issue. Or I would just start doodling the map and I'll be no, wait, it should be different. It should be like this. And then I'll be I already drew all this shit now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, I need to undo it, right? So the process is to find the theme, create set pieces. Then after that, create a flow chart of those set pieces,
mm-hmm.
and then actually draw everything out
and kind of fill it in.
Yeah. And you'll probably jump around a little bit doing this, but that's my idea. Mm-hmm. So with the dungeon that Daron and friends are in right now, the set piece, the theme was Wizard's Tower kind of thing, or Wizard's Lair. It's not a tower. And then set pieces,
it's a really tall tree.
Yeah, set pieces were I'm not going to reveal too many, but I was all right, there's going to be. I want there to be monsters in front of the entrance, a hidden entrance that has monsters hiding around it.
Yeah, just about killed me.
And I want to have a set of doors guarded by suits of armor and
foiled.
Yeah,
expertly.
And those were the sort of things, and then there's a whole bunch more, which I'm not going to tell you, because Daron's in the middle of the dungeon right now. I was I want there to be an imp in a cage that's going to be talking to everyone, because I want that.
Mm-hmm. Then you're really good at acting out imps in cages, or just imps in general. You're hey, yeah, you guys are all the worst, aren't you? Yeah, Give me pain. I love it. I love it. Give me the pain. It's really weird when Greg gets into it. Not weird. I guess the only thing that's weird is like how good he is at acting out some of these people. Like his brain just flips to like character acting.
Well, thank you.
And it gets pretty nutty. So little
and
shouts out to my boy.
I forgot. There's one other thing. When I'm creating the set pieces, I have a couple basically checklists to fill in. And so
now, is this something that you came up with like on your own out of necessity, or is it something that you kind of like read other things and you began to?
The checklists I took from other things, but everything else I created on my own. So a lot of these I've kind of pieced them together from different places, but the main source that I got it from was called the Dungeon Checklist, and it's from the blog Goblin Punch. And it's just a good beginning, and I really agree with the philosophy in it, and it makes sure that there's a lot of variation in there. So I'm gonna read these off quickly, and I'm going to give you the blog has a long explanation and examples, and I'll just give you a quick summary of each one. So there are 7 things that the blog gives you, and then I've added a couple more. And, not all of these are necessary, but they're like, oh man, whenever I'm thinking like, oh, I need to have something, I look to this list, and then that gives me inspiration maybe for a couple things. So the first thing you need is something to steal. It's loot. You need to have loot. That's pretty obvious. Something to be killed. So something in the dungeon that is a fight that your players are going to win. Something that is there, like something... something that's the stormtroopers of
the baddie, skeletons, that kind of thing.
And then something to kill you, so that's something to kill the player, like something that is a real fight that you that the players should probably avoid, or if they don't avoid, it's going to give them a real run for their money. The Ian just encountered that. And our dungeon.
Yeah, the oops, fuck.
Yep. The fourth thing is you need different paths. So that's just, there's not just one pathway through there. That's, pretty self-explanatory. It makes it more interesting. It makes it feel like you have choices. Someone to talk to. So that's why I have, that's the imp, right? Because I also was making this for a group of new players, and I was like, okay, they gotta have something in this dungeon like to role play with, right? Something to experiment with, so that could be puzzles or kind of like something in the environment that you could play with. And so something to experiment with was in my case it was the door puzzle that I gave them,
which was super fun.
Good.
I really enjoyed that.
I'm glad.
For reference, it was a puzzle that it was like numbers 1 through.
It's called a magic square.
Yeah, it's a magic square. It was like 1 through 9, and you have to make each line of numbers add up to, in this case, 14.
15.
Yeah, sorry. And it was cool. I really liked it.
Yep. When I showed that to the other group of players, like all these new players, this was like it was getting kind of late, and so this was gonna be the last thing they did. Just immediately, they were just like, fuck you. Fuck this. Fuck you for making me do math. This is bullshit. And I was just cackling.
Loved every second of it. I was like moving the pieces around. Yep. I'm like, okay, that equals this. And then Patrick, who was sitting right next to me, like pulls out an Excel spreadsheet on his phone, like makes like this equals the sum of this and the other one, and I'm like, man, I should have used the technology, but that's just, I wasn't cheating by any means. And he ended up like figuring it out, probably just because he could plug in numbers so much quicker than I could. But in any case, it was cool.
What was really cool about with that group of new players is that they messed with it for a little bit, and then after I was kind of like, oh well, I'll end as soon as they open it, and like they'll open the door, and then it just got to a point where it was like, nah, it isn't happening. Like we spent like 10 minutes or so on it, so ended the session. And before we played the next day, all of them came back to me with the answer. Like every single one of them had figured it out independently, which was really cool. And I thought
there was one
told me that they really got engaged.
Yeah, there was one encounter that I threw at my Thursday players, And it was like the Tainted Unicorn Spring or whatever, and I pulled it basically directly from D&D Beyond's like Encounter of the Week thing. And it was like, you have 3 jugs. You need to somehow get, X amount of gallons into each jug, but they're irregularly shaped. Blank, 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 blank. You need to do it within like 15 moves. And so they're like, oh God. And one of the players is just like, I got this. And then he like mapped out every move. And I was like, okay, so you do that, that, and that. And I counted them all up. And I'm like, okay, you did it. You saved the spring. Congratulations.
Mm-hmm.
And I think those challenges are often overlooked. So
yeah, and I'm
certainly going to use one of those. I don't know where I'm going to put it in my thing, but that's what we're here to do.
Yeah. And then number 7 is something the players probably won't find. So something you won't find, which is an interesting one. I actually really the blog explains why it should be there, and I actually really like it because it's you're putting something deliberately, something that is not like the players could get to it in some way they could probably do it, but it's really more like to convince yourself that there's still secrets in this place, and there's still something, there's still something that's beyond, there's something that's that's put in the dungeon that's not for the players to be there. There's something just a little bit beyond that, and it's kind of more like a psychological trick for yourself.
Yeah,
but I like that, and I'm of course not telling you what
that's fine.
My example is.
And then tell me afterwards.
Yeah, and then these are kind of I've added 2 things to the list that are sort of, these aren't really necessary, and I was just sort of taking an example from somewhere else and copying onto here. But I created an 8 environmental hazards, and a 9 is a puzzle trick RP challenge, which really kind of overlaps with some other things. But those are my notes right now that I've got down. So that's, that's my checklist. So when I'm going through set pieces, like I'm going through this and I'm making sure that all those things are there. And then after that, there's what I call like a flow chart. So you're figuring out how these set pieces are going to fit together in your dungeon, and then so you can figure out pacing of the dungeon, right, if that makes sense. And so instead of like actually drawing a map, you're drawing this thing happens, then this thing happens, and this thing happens, or like these things are connected more or less, things like that. And so
get the key to unlock the door, which you get the orb from, something like that. And
to help, obviously this isn't perfect, right, but to help me flowchart better, I organize each set piece into I believe I've got 4 different categories. No, 5 different categories.
5. Right. Are they like your, plot game?
Nope. Okay. Nope. So these are more geographical. They're more like organizational. Like how these things could interact with each other. Yep. They literally have them as entrance or exits, hallways, hubs, and dead ends. And I just called the last category generic. So they're kind of what you'd expect, but entrance and exits are places in and out of this dungeon,
thresholds,
but not within the dungeon. It's to get in and out. So it's like in the dungeon that you're in right now. It's the puzzle door, and then there's a skylight that you can leave out of as well. If you were to climb all the way up out of that, or have
alternately,
like a fly spell.
We could have entered in through the skylight.
Absolutely, yep. Although that's something you weren't likely to do.
Yeah, because you banned flying in your games.
You could have climbed that.
Yeah, I could have. Probably.
Yeah, you could have. I saw that eye roll, and you're like, "Oh yeah, you're right." So that's so entrance and exits, hallways. So those are set pieces that are going to connect to other set piece. Basically, like you're making your flow chart, right? And you have the entrance and exits are beginnings and ends. The hallways connect different set pieces together. Basically just from 2 areas. From there's a like one set piece on one end, one set piece on the other. Hubs are places that connect many different set pieces.
Yeah, an atrium.
Yep,
perhaps.
Dead ends are ones where this is you go to this place and there's no choice but to go back. So on your flow chart you go down to a dead end, and then you don't have anything branching off of it. And then generic, I could come up with a better word for it, I'm sure, but I haven't figured it out yet.
Like
or just
miscellaneous,
are
perhaps.
things that are going to happen that you're going to come across multiple times in this place.
Okay.
So you could think of them like a dead adventurer on the ground, or like a rickety ladder that has been set up to climb up and down something, or a filled in hallway where there are things that you can create just one set of rules of how this is supposed to be handled, and then you can just use that whenever you put this thing in there. So like if it's dead adventures, like this is what I plan to do in the big dungeon that I'm making, is that I'm just gonna have a random table of loot on every for them, and I'm just gonna roll every time you search one. And I'm not gonna make choice loot or like choice tables for each one. And this is something that a lot of other people do, where they have like, oh hey, here's your random table for this kind of thing, but now I'm just sort of I'm pointing it out more so.
Okay.
And like, oh hey, you've got this dungeon covered in vines, and there's a whole bunch of places where you can climb along the walls using vines, where it's, oh hey, that's a thing that I put in here that you'll see multiple times, right? And so generic can overlap with some things. So sometimes it's something just sitting on the ground. Other times it's a mode of getting around. So that's
just kind of a motif, perhaps.
Yeah, generic is just something that you're probably going to see multiple times.
Okay.
Or right. And then after that you flowchart it, which is a little bit hard to show in audio, but it's going to be you're going to write like puzzle entrance, then then it would be armor doorway or armor room, then it would be imp room, and then on armor room then I have two branches going off, because the armor room's a hub where I've got it to storage room and lab, and like that's the kind of thing that I'm doing. And that's
before you put the dungeon design to paper.
That's before I do any drawing of the map and figuring out like the dimensions of things.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Do you think that this is something that would work?
It's like the rough outline of your dungeon map, basically.
Yep. And that's, I think, for me, it's like, now this lets you do pacing instead of sort of drawing out.
They're your scenes, right?
Your scenes,
and then those arrows you just fill in with like, okay, this is a doorway transition, this is a stairway, this is a trap door, this is a whatever,
more or less. Or I mean, maybe you're not even that specific. You're just like, I want this thing, I want this thing here, I want you to be able to go from a couple places from this place, and then maybe you figure out how you actually have that happen afterwards or not. But that's the plan. So do you think, like, does this make sense to you?
No,
this makes a lot of sense to me,
and I think that it will certainly work for what I'm trying to do here.
Okay, so Daron, tell us, what is this dungeon that
we're making today? Dungeon, it's less of a dungeon, really. It's
a tower, a spire,
perhaps. And so this was originally a structure built by so this whole thing is in Hyad, right? And so if you haven't listened to that episode, you can. It's not necessary. I'm not going to call it like prerequisite listening, but it helps inform this a little bit more. So at the formation of this whole city, some like Dragonborn showed up, and they were greeted by the natives, and the natives were like, "Oh, hey man, like, you seem pretty cool. Here's how you don't die around here." And there's this big fire that we have going. It's rainbow, and it kind of keeps all the evil stuff at bay. And they're like, cool. And so they, co-partnered this, big, calling it a lighthouse. It's basically just a big magical brazier on a spire. And I like to think that, its basic structure, like the oldest part of the structure, which is like this spire. And I think it'll just be like it almost looks like it might be telescoping, the style where it's like,
there's terraces on it.
So there's, the middle, the skinniest one that goes all the way up to the top where the fire is, and then about halfway down, it's a little bit thicker, and that goes all the way to the ground. And I think that was the original building, and then once the whole place became like more populated, the natives noped out of there, they built a structure around the original structure, and that became like their government center, which is also like, vaguely religious, I suppose.
Yeah.
Like kind of, kept the nature of it, but then that central building with whatever it's made out of is like your probably one of the oldest buildings like on the coast, likely. And so this whole place is going to be where they're going, and there might be a basement, but that's not really where the boss fight is. The boss fight is going to be up at the magical fire at the pinnacle, is where it will be, and it's going to be sick. And I've got kind of like my key bad guys in there, because they, this thing called the Black Mist, if you're familiar with League of Legends, you know what that is. Hecarim and Thresh showed up like with the Black Mist, and they're like, we're gonna take souls and turn them into ghosts and wraiths and stuff. And so the party's got like a replacement magical flame, and they've got to get to the top
and swap it out with the Black Mist that's there.
Yeah. And I think that the bad guys are probably like using that Spire as like another central point from which to spread the Black Mist like on the mainland, instead of just it rolling in from the sea.
So my thought when I'm, hearing this, like starting to write down themes or motifs that you want to see, staircases. I want the fear of heights. That's the one. So I things that elicit that. So I like the idea of, there's opportunities to scale on the outside of this, or
I mean, you'd have to get on top of like, the government part of the building in order to scale. But, or you have to hop on top of the...
What I like the idea of is that you are in between a rock and a hard place, and then you're like, hey, look, the window, like that's... I want to like elicit, swashbuckling and daring scenes like that, where people are climbing on the outside of the building, or maybe there's something that they would find in there that lets them sort of do like flying things. So maybe they get to a point, and then you want to... I
mean, one of them's a druid who can literally turn into a giant spider. They've done it before and climb, like with someone on their back.
Yeah, totally. Or maybe you want to get to maybe if you want to give the player something that will let them scale this place up and down. Maybe it's something that's only temporary once they get to a certain spot, and then so you can have the dungeon have one kind of terrain and one kind of layout up to the point where they all get scrolls of spider climb, whatever, because those are kept in like an emergency safe in there. Right. And then
for the times when this happens and you do actually prevent the tragedy.
And then everyone, they get the scrolls of spider climb going, and now they're like, oh, now we're fighting on the surface of the building. Like, I think that's super cool.
That would be super cool.
Better hope you don't get push attacked, right?
Yep.
And that's...
Yeah. It's like, you're just Spider-Man fighting, basically, minus the webs. I think that would be really cool. Not something that I thought of immediately, and so I'm kind of, you're making me think, right?
Yeah.
Like this spire, like it's old and ancient in construction. It's likely not as kind of well made, or like there weren't the same thoughtfulness kind of stuff.
The first thing that came to mind when you're talking about like, oh, hey, there's this thing here, and then and then it was later renovated, was like there's this there's a spire that's made out of like stone or something, like people shaped it and like sculpted the rock of this place through magic into a kind of tower, and then afterwards like they made that, and then they made it crudely with few open spaces in it. Think of kind of like pyramids, right? Where there's actually not, like, most of it was...
What I'm thinking is that this thing probably is not hollow. Like there's a carved staircase that, winds up around it.
But then the dwarves came in and they looked at it and like, look at this piece of massive rock. And by massive, I mean like one piece. Like there's no faults in it. And they're like, we know how to carve this. We have this architectural knowledge that we can turn this into something else, and we can create open spaces within it. That was kind of my first thought, where it's like, so there's probably parts in the Spire that are old and unfinished and are original, and then there's parts with beautiful rooms carved out by these dwarves,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's stuff on the outside built onto it too, likely. Because I would think that the dwarves would probably redo the fascia of it, and so there's maybe there's like crenellations and things on the outside where just the original bits of the spire are just sort of starting to peek out, or maybe there's a lot more of it now that are there that a dragon came and knocked off part of the crenellations or something like that, right? I don't. Those are things I'm thinking of. Like I want you to have a moment where you're like, oh, we're in the like the old building now. Like that's kind of a thought.
And I think I want that to be as you go inward and as you go up, right? And then like maybe this like the very top of this thing like is still 99% unfinished, and you basically get up there and it's a eagle's nest type, like know, what would it be, like a cliff top or something, and instead of a giant eagle's nest, it's just on top of the spire. It's a giant like brass or gold bowl basically that now this black mist is billowing out of. Then you smash your lantern in there and it erupts into rainbow flame. And I think that's kind of what I'm going for. Like the very top of it is still raw, like natural stone, but as you go down, the dwarves had chiseled more of it. And there's probably some like rooms that were carved in as like the keeper of the flame like hangs out in here during their shifts, or like there's watch people or something, and now those people are like turned into zombies and ghosts and wraiths.
So how much of this dungeon do you want to be on the ground floor in this government building? And how much do you want it to be in the spire? I think
most of the square footage is the government center.
Okay, but I really like the idea of like a good 8 rooms or so in the spire, to make it feel like this is really like a climb, like putting a lot of stuff in there. So you're and you're always going upward, or you're going to a level of clearing things out, and you have to climb upward again. It's your choice, but I like the idea of putting a lot in the spire. And so maybe, this government building, it makes sense for it to be quite large, but maybe you don't actually populate it with much.
I think
so it's like, hey, here's this large room of desks and offices and things like that, and like, oh, there's actually, maybe you just don't put everything in there. It's just a place that shows you like, oh, look at how desolate it is now. There's no one in here.
Like the desks are overturned, and there's like a decomposed body on the ground.
Because you could do that. So like, how much stuff do you want on the ground floor in the spire is something to think about.
I think the ground floor will be your introduction areas. It's like, okay, here you're introduced to the theme of this place. It's like they've already kind of gotten a taste of like what this black mist has done, right? And so what it does is it turns people from like people, and it, infests their soul and turns them into like a zombie, a skeleton, a ghost, or whatever. And they ran into one person already who was basically just like a husk of themselves and was basically a zombie waiting to happen.
So but they haven't come across it proper yet. You're saying that you've come across someone where that's almost there, but so definitely on this ground floor you need to have I would say my instinct says a fight, but really it's an encounter. Like you need to have there be some the players witness the enemy in its true form, which is like these the zombies. They get an idea of like, all right, this is what we're going to be fighting.
And they already fought a shadow that was kind of like lurking through the town, and it like chased a dude and killed him, and then it like followed the party, and it's a shadow, so you're not going to see it. And then they fought. It wasn't too bad of a fight.
Shadow.
So I think I have like a list written down of basically the monsters that are already listed, right? You got your zombies and your ghosts and your wraiths, and I'm trying to think of like what I want to put where, and to make sure that it's thematic. So, and then I was also thinking about kind of like
flying enemies in the spire, because luck your players.
Oh, absolutely.
Just saying.
Like, you're gonna have ghosts and wraiths probably constantly going up and down the spire. And here's a fun detail that I told Courtney about recently. They got these rings when they were in the Shadowkeep or Shadowfell dungeon that once they left the Shadowfell dungeon, they, lost 90% of their power. Well, now they're in the Black Mist, which probably means that darkness is seeping back into the rings, and they're probably going to get, they're
more powerful.
Yeah, more powerful again. And so, lucky for them, it'll be boosted in their favor.
Is there anything beyond just like, is there anything that you want them to see beyond the sort of, oh, here's the list of all of the undead in the monster manual that I'm going to use? Is there any kind of creature that you're like, that should be there? Like I'm thinking like, oh, I want something that's going to be climbing on the outside of the building, something that will like, obviously there's all these incorporeal things that could be facing them out there, but I want something physical that could throw them off of it.
Yeah, and I've been thinking about that, right? Because not everything is like, a shadow ghoul or whatever.
Yeah, and I would think like this is the most important part of this. Okay. Let me.
This is the pinnacle of the campaign.
Yeah.
This is defeating Saruman in the Shire.
Yeah, but also, I guess you talked about some League of Legends thing, and I got it confused with what you're going on that campaign. Was this actually put here by like a consciousness or like a real like an entity, or did it just sort of happen because it wasn't there? Like, is there a malevolent consciousness that's crafted this situation?
Yes and no. So there is a thing called the Black Mist. It was introduced to the players a while ago. Last time they were in Hiad, and I like rolled a clip from the Harrowing like 2016 or something. It was a really cool League of Legends clip. You should watch it. I'll link it in the description. It's like, yeah, occasionally the Black Mist will roll up, and it brings with it all sorts of horrors and things like that. And so, as the party was in the Shadowfell, doing their thing, the dragon sent them back like 2 months or whatever into the future, at which time the brazier like extinguished.
Right.
And at that point, the Black Mist rolled up, the big baddies of the Black Mist, took over, and they're like, okay, we're going to drop, a Black Mist conduit or apex or whatever, like right at the top of this spire.
So I'm just saying that this has probably been defended. Like there's been some thought put into like, we need to make sure some disgusting do-gooders don't come here and fix this.
Yes,
right?
Yeah.
So there's probably things that aren't going to be seen anywhere else, or things that have been created to be put here. Please excuse everyone walking heavily above us, by the way. I'm not sure if you can even hear it, but
yeah. Fucking neighbors. I am that upstairs neighbor, and I feel bad because I have like a dog, and I'm sure my downstairs neighbors don't really like me sometimes.
Like click, scratch, scratch.
And like she's not a heavy dog, so it's not like she's pounding the floor, but she likes her ball, and we like to throw it. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, hot take. Some people just walk loudly. Some people just put their feet on the ground heavily, and come on, like
fuck 'em.
Be good to your body. Be gentle. Be light in your steps.
Be an elegant and graceful walker.
I often scare my roommate unintentionally because I just walk around subtly, and you should practice that.
Yeah, walk on the balls of your feet, and that means the front.
Being stealthy.
Yes. You never know when it will come in handy. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, there will be some monster here, not in the monster manual, or like co-opted out of their customized reskin something. That, they haven't seen before. And they already encountered that with Hecarim, who's like, heavily armored, phantom centaur.
Right, but don't think, like, the important part is not that, like, oh, it's not in the monster manual. The important part is, like, what is this thing? What is it? What vision of an encounter do you have in your mind? Because I've got one where it's, like, something, there's something that is larger than a horse, with arms that are like 8 feet long that are thin and gangling, just grab the side of this building, and it's got like, maybe it's got like 6 because screw you, right?
Yeah.
And it just can effortlessly like climb and move around, and it's, you know, and the players are like spider climb or stuck to the wall, or they're climbing up, and this thing just tries to grab them and throw them off or knock them off. And like, that's the, you know, I want them to like, oh, they get on the outside and they're like, oh yeah, sweet, and then maybe they fight some wraith or something like that, and like, oh yeah, man, we're doing this, and then this thing like, they see a hand creep over the side of the spire, and then just more and more and more of this shape comes around, and you know, you just have that moment where the players are like, oh no, we're fucked. Like,
I think that would be cool, and that's not something that I thought of at first. You know, mainly I was just thinking about like incorporeal mooks flying up and down and left and right, and then like the boss fight at the top with this like Thresh character. So I think, something that is creepy, climby on, you know,
and big.
Yes. I'm trying to think of like how much of like the arc of this spire this thing would actually take up, and I'm thinking it'd be like it could cover about 1/10 of it, just like stretched from, you know, front leg to back leg.
Yeah.
And so like moving around this thing, like it could just circle the thing, like the base of the ancient spire, like in a turn.
Yeah.
Easy. And it could probably like cover ground to tip in like 2 or 3.
So it's something that's got uncomfortably fast move speed.
Yeah.
And is trying to grab
its
you.
Its function is
off.
to
Its function is to throw you on the ground.
Yeah, and it's probably succeeded in that endeavor with other would-be heroes before.
Do you want the players to be? Do you want the players to be able to get onto the roof of this government building at all?
I think it should be an option. And that was something that I think I didn't think about right away, but I think they could. They're currently in it.
For sure. Okay. I have an idea for a set piece. They're in, if either they can get onto the roof, and they can see you know, like people who have fallen onto it and died, or there's holes in the roof where people have
I was
come
thinking
through.
Like, you know, they explore a little bit, and one of the set pieces is like there's a mangled body like in the middle of a floor in one of these rooms, and there's like, you know, he's surrounded by like, you know, shattered shingles or like parts of the building, and then you can see like looking from that guy up, you can see, you know, towards the top of the spire.
Squint your eyes.
Yeah, and then you see like a little black thing, like massive, knowing the proportions.
You squint your eyes, and like you swear that there's some black shape on the side of the spire, which it's you can't really tell what it is, but it's just really it doesn't make sense. Is it a shadow going across it, or no? It can't be, because it's protruding from the body of the building itself, and it just crawled. It just moved onto the other side, it seems, and you don't know what you just saw.
Yeah. And so I think that's absolutely a set piece that's going.
So are you writing this stuff
write
down?
This down.
Are you writing this down?
Yes, I'm writing this down.
And I also think that just in case they might miss that, you should have an opportunity to look through like some windows when you're climbing, like when you're at the base of the spire and you're just above the rooftop, and look out and see holes in, or see people like you know, broken on the top of the roof, because I think
like maybe one's impaled on, you know,
because I definitely think this should be more than one. This should be like a handful of people that you find, or bodies that you find.
And one theme I want to have kind of like coming out of, you know, this the end of this campaign, and you know what they'll learn later, is that like this isn't the only place where the Black Mist rolled up to. It's like the biggest, baddest place, because you know, it's the apex with a magical brazier, but there are other places where heroes had, you know, risen up to like combat the darkness, right? Where it's like, okay, with great adversity comes great heroism, and like these people tried to do that here, and they got tossed from a spire. And you know, now it's their turn to get tossed from a spire. I hope that doesn't happen, but it might.
So, I mean, there's a couple things you could do. First, like, do any of your players have contingencies against that? Like, do they have feather fall? Can they change into things that
I
fly?
don't think so. No flying speed until you're like, I don't know, 8th level as a druid or something.
God, that's lame.
I mean, it's a
if you want
maybe
to,
it's 6th level, maybe.
if you want to be like accurate to real life, if they shapeshift into something small, they, like, you'll be fine. Like, you can throw a mouse off of a skyscraper. And
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
It'll bounce on the ground.
Yeah.
and
So
walk
she
away.
gets you throw an insect that can't fly down a 100-foot shaft. It'll be fine. The rat will bounce. The human will break all its limbs, and the horse will turn into a puddle.
Yeah.
Because that's how physics works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So one set piece, dude thrown
like
through
roof, yeah,
and others on roof
mm-hmm.
or something. They're just dead people.
Yeah. There definitely should be. I think there should be a lot of corpses.
Yeah. No, and there's absolutely going to be like, at least partially or some like decomposing skeletons, and I think there might be like recently departed ghosts like weeping over their own skeletons and like the skeletons of their friends.
Mm-hmm.
And they might not be like inherently evil, but you piss them off and they might attack or something.
Distraught and confused.
Okay, so that's gonna be one. Departed but not completely, we'll say departed spirits or trap spirits, whatever. I know what I mean. Sad ghost. And then so there's also going to be patrols of like bad beasts in the government center if that's where they choose to be, as well as probably some stuff skittering along the rooftop.
Yeah. Yeah, like definitely something with a climb speed that's on the roof, because I think it'd be cool. Like, you look out and then you see the things moving around and you're like, oh, we gotta hide. And so when you're on the outside, you may have a race where where you've got something on the roof starting to come up and climbing up the spire towards you.
Cool. My mind immediately goes to just like spiders or like evil spiders or like, I don't know, other things like that, because that's just,
well, this is like a jungle sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
You could have like zombie chimpanzees or something like that. Oh,
hell yeah.
Yeah.
Zombie chimps. Something that I also threw at them already was like, as they were traveling into the city, going along the, road through the woods or whatever, the forest, there was like a blighted dryad or whatever that was like, it was like dark, and there's like dark pixies and stuff that were kind of like bent to the will of this thing because it was like, it's all infested or whatever.
Do you want the garden around the government center to be a challenge?
They're already in the government center, so
okay.
Probably not.
Right.
But, if they go back out, probably. It'll be like, thorny vines and assassin vines and things. Okay, so I'm trying to think of what kind of like a... So what are the other set pieces that you have? Some treasure.
Yep. So something to steal. So like loot and goodies. I think that there should be... I definitely want there to be like a cache of things to help you, a cache of things that will let the players not ensure that they're going to succeed, but let the players fight on the outside of the spire. And it shouldn't be something that they have to do, but something that they could do. Okay. So I think there's also an opportunity for them to fight inside of the spire. Like, oh yeah, absolutely.
Perhaps the dwarves excavated like the bottom part in order to make it passable within it. But then obviously once you get to the top, you have to take the carved stone. Yeah, the last end.
Yeah, but you could bypass a bunch of that if you went on the outside.
So I'm trying to think of things to steal. And would they be like government supplies? Because I think probably. Like, I don't know what the bad guys would have brought with them, because they just corrupt 90% of what they take.
Was this ever like a reliquary for the important items of this place? Like,
I think
was there a treasury here? Like, was like that kind of thing? Like,
that was something that bopped into my head. I think like due to the ancient and relatively spiritual nature of this place, it's probably like There's probably a lockup of important religious artifacts somewhere. Some perhaps
And
powerfully magical.
I think that they shouldn't all be in one place. I think they should definitely have multiple places where you could get things that the players could use, or where they could stumble across them. Like my thought is like, oh, maybe there's an office of someone that has like some like valuable and expensive stuff in it that the players could use.
A couple things that just popped into my head. One, like there's probably in addition to the one hero that was tossed through the thing, there's probably like some bunkered up room that other heroes had
a last stand in.
Yeah, had a last stand in, and like their stuff is still there. Right. And so there's not a lot of guilt in that. And so, maybe that's where they would get like scrolls of spider climbing, right? Yeah. Because those heroes would have been differently prepared to do this.
Right.
Another thought that I had was like a corrupt government official. Like you could stumble into that, and like, there's a purse of coins and like a letter talking about like some, stolen shipment or like fenced goods or something like that. That'd be an easy one.
I think I definitely think there should be consumables. I'm a big fan of giving players tons of consumable items, so you can give them like something that basically you can give them a solution to a future problem that maybe you don't even know what that problem is, right? So I'm a fan of giving people that, like giving people potions and scrolls in particular, or limited use magic items.
Yeah, and so I think that's one thing that I don't usually do that, and this is another reason why I want to go through more like, Wizards of the Coast like adventures. That way I can, run through them and try to understand like why they build their dungeons the way they do, and that's some things like, okay, here's a treasure table, roll on it, or like here are some set consumable items that people could use,
right?
Okay, so we got Hero's Last Stand. I'm trying to think of a puzzle door. I think there's probably like some sort of magical anti-trespass thing that they would have to figure out at some point.
Either it's something that would keep people from scaling the tower, or it would be like the door, like the final door to get up there has like a kind of puzzle lock in it or something like that. It could be. It doesn't even you don't have to do like a puzzle door or something like that. Yeah. Especially because I'm imagining that this it may not end up being this way depending on how like stealthy your players are, or how sort of unaware all of the like zombie, all these undead creatures are. But I sort of imagine this taking on this tower is probably like a siege. Well, sorry, not a siege, but like more like a heist where you're like, we're on a clock, we gotta do this real fast. Like we can't just stay here and have all these things come to us. We can't fight all the enemies that we're seeing here. Like you should feel like you're going into the belly of the beast. And so you may come across like a puzzle door and you're like, oh wait, so we could go through this, and then that means we don't have to go on the outside of the building, and we don't have to attract all these things. And so maybe we'll try to waste our time here trying to figure it out. Or if we can't figure it out, or if we didn't find something that we needed for it, then I guess we're gonna have to then we're gonna have to do something else.
Yeah, I think so. The thought that I currently have was, I think I'm gonna put the puzzle door like on the entrance to the inside part. Like the force that brought this here, the intelligence was like, okay, we're gonna put creepy monster on the outside, fling him off the Spire monster on the outside, and then we're going to lock the inside way so that, we cover both of our bases for the most part. Maybe, obviously the ghosts and things cover flight options.
Should this be a lock created by the Black Mist?
Yeah, it's like a magical thing created by probably this Thresh character or some other like maestro behind the scenes. But, immediately what comes to mind is like a Destiny Hive style, like you have to break these seals, and you could spend a long time doing a anti-magic ritual bullshit, or they somehow get a hint dropped that there are magical items in this place somewhere. Go down to the basement and you grab break the seal hammer, basically. It's a magical item that has anti-magic properties or whatever, and I imagine it's just like you get this hammer and it's golden and it's got jewels in it, and then they have to like swing it at this
Mhm.
this door, and then like every time they swing it, like one seal breaks, another seal breaks, and then the last one breaks, and it shatters, and like maybe as they do it, like this holy artifact like falls apart a little bit, and then
Possibly.
it's basically just here's the key, but it's not
Somewhere.
a key, it's a hammer, and you have to hit the thing a few times, and maybe like like right after you hit like the first seal, like shit starts pouring out of it, or like comes out of the woodwork to try to like hit you, and so you got to protect your buddy as you break the seal.
Mhm. So this is my thought.
And then you board up the door behind you, or
which
something.
you can,
Okay.
obviously give, choose which one you like. My thought was this would be some kind of lock, or it would be more like a force field of some kind, or something, or something where like you enter it and it hurts you, and then you have to back out, like kind of like there's a field of negative energy in there, or something like that. But it will let undead go through it. So if you trick it into thinking you're undead, you can go through it.
Okay, there you go.
Because think about like you're this thrush guy, and you're like, all right, like the unlife is my domain. Like nothing in here that is unlife is going to be a threat to me. It's something that I control, so I can just make it so I can turn the switch to everything that isn't unlife is going to be hurt going through here, or is going to be somehow held up. And so the players somehow, some way need to make themselves like that. That's kind of why I don't know what that would be. Obviously there's a spell, I forgot the name, but something magic aura, where you can basically like make, for the purposes of like magic items and other things, you can just make
like detecting.
You can just make you appear to be anything else. So you could do that, or maybe there are like some amulets that they find, or maybe they're wearing a zombie. I don't know, right? Or
the I think it was The Walking Dead or something, where it's like, just cover yourself in zombie guts, so then zombies can't tell you apart because you don't smell the right way.
But I think it should operate more on like a spiritual level, because that's my perception of undead in D&D, is that it's not physical. It's a metaphysical kind of experience.
I just don't know how to do that without like, it'd be like, why is there a pretend I'm undead amulet in here?
Well, I mean, at the same time, why is there a magic artifact to break a seal in this place, right?
Well, that would be something that I'd imagine, you have some great, Warhammer or something, and it's like, this was a relic of, a past paladin or something that, helped combat the darkness the last time that a great calamity struck. And you can use that to bust the door.
So I have a thought, and maybe this is a bit too late. Like maybe you've established too many things to go back and kind of retcon this into there.
Okay.
But maybe like you kill an undead thing, and there's just a little bit of essence left. Or just for a moment, there's like a little bit of essence left. And then either you have some way to bottle it up, or you just kill undead next to the door. And then it kind and then it opens to that or something like that. But I like the idea that like maybe there's like a kind of like a weird like malaise that lingers, that you suck up into something, and then you release it on yourself as you go through.
And the other thing I'm thinking is that there are not unfriendly ghosts around. If you can convince one of them to just like trench coat you through.
Exactly.
Like you could probably do that. Like it would hurt you the whole time, but
no, that's fine.
You can do it. I think that's probably what the solution would be, or like maybe in that hero's bunker, I would like give them that same one of them has an amulet because they did their research or something. They've got like I don't know, whatever. Scroll of spider climb and an amulet that
like maybe
makes you seem undead.
Maybe one of the heroes was a necromancer.
Perhaps, yeah.
And there's like equipment there that lets them do things, and there's notes talking about I
don't know if I want to give Courtney more access to necromancer things. I'm kidding. I love you, babe. Love you, baby.
I don't know. Fine. Is there a different character joking. That would be more interested in that stuff?
No, I don't think so. I think all of them are pretty, well, of any character in that current campaign, it would be Courtney's character.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
whatever.
Huh.
The other one's like a
People don't change.
right? League of Evil, it's not an in-game thing. So yeah, I think that could be one of them. I think it'd be fun to like, put together like a ragtag team of adventurers that, went in here and it's like, yeah, no, it's the good necromancer and like a gnome bard.
Necromancer's a profession.
Yeah,
It's
exactly. And just, really just trope it up and then they're all just like sitting dead in a room.
Yeah.
So that's certainly going to be a thing. And so I do think that I still want that Warhammer thing to be an option. But they're going to have to like go somewhere else to do it. And then additionally, they like have that.
Yeah. Like
there.
that would be, this, I actually,
that would be the thing. That would be the secret.
Yeah. The Warhammer, I think would be a good option for like the thing your players are not expected to find. So it would be something that would like maybe somewhere talks about it and it's behind a secret door, like when you're going through an official's, notes in an office somewhere, it talks about this place.
Yeah, maybe he's trying to like sell it on the DL.
Or maybe you find like a shitty old map, right? That like marks something there. And I think that would be I would like that. Like you find like an old blueprint of the place that's like a couple versions old and you're like, what it says there's a door here. What's that?
Yeah. I think that would be really cool. And I think that would kind of fit in with that other set piece that I already put up. Like there's a corrupt government official who was like, given a bunch of coins to like, sell access to
the
this vault
government
or whatever.
official doesn't know isn't able to get to the item. Like he's trying to figure out where it is, and his notes and like his correspondence with other people is him like trying, like he's talking with like the antiquarian of this place and he's like, I need to get these blueprints, and then like antiquarian is responding like politely telling him to fuck off.
Yeah.
And so you're like, wait, if we find the antiquarian's office, then we can find the old blueprints, and then we can you're like
yeah, I think that that's going in.
Yep.
Okay, so there's that. We have the door, which isn't really a puzzle door. It's just like the roadblock that doesn't have a very obvious.
Does anyone in the party have access to dispel magic?
I don't think so.
Good.
Good. Abjuration wizards are not in this party, which is actually what Ada is. She's an abjuration wizard.
Oh yeah, I know.
Yeah, she hardly does anything with
I
abjuration.
know.
First characters, heck yeah. Okay, so we have those. What are the other set pieces that we still need to hit?
So we've got something to steal. We got a couple things to steal.
Yep.
Something to be killed. So we've got chimpanzees on the roof.
Yep.
We've got some like white.
I think the chimpanzees were like former pets,
and
so they were just like taken over.
It was like a zoo.
Yeah, they probably got still like rotting collars on them or something.
Could they have come from the forest too?
Well,
like it's a jungle, right?
Yeah, I just think it'd be cool to be like, oh, little baby chimpanzee is now. He's like Jack from Pirates of the Caribbean, the monkey Jack.
Yeah. So, and then there's gonna be other whites and shadows in this place.
Yeah,
too.
whites, shadows, zombie skeletons.
Something to kill you.
That's the flinger.
That's the flinger on the side, and I'm assuming Thresh.
Yeah, Thresh, and if Hecarim can somehow break into. So Hecarim, the armored Phantom Centaur, is I think going to be throwing himself
the gates
into the door because apparently it's like he's not able to get in via other means. He was supposed to like fight them, and I didn't have him like fully statted out, and one of them like blinded him, and then they just ran for it, and I'm like, all right, whatever. Hey, worst comes to worst, Hecarim's just gonna find him later.
Yeah, I mean. I like the idea of him charging up the spiral staircase towards them. Like they get in and then they hear like they hear the hooves.
Yeah, like after they get through that threshold
breathing,
into the
and it's like and they're like
and he's like, if anybody listening plays, it's gonna be the centaur, heavily armored. He's got like the halberd and things, and can use a bonus action. Like he's got great weapon master or polearm master, all that kind of stuff. It's gonna be fucking great.
Taking
a charge attack
heads off. So is this thing undead or not?
Yeah, super undead.
Okay, so then it can get through the door.
Oh yeah.
But that's fine because they just have to. It just you puts the pressure on. They got to rush. Okay, so we got 3 things to kill the players, which is appropriate because it kind of sounds like this is the climax. Of so we got different paths. So
yeah, you can go inside or outside, I guess,
and then
up or through.
And then on the ground floor, I'm guessing that it's gonna basically just be open. Like there's not really gonna be many things restricting your movement on the ground floor.
I think there's, it's a radially built building, and so probably around the spire is going to be like some sort of like a small courtyard or something.
Yeah.
And then like I envision it something like the Pentagon, but I think most of my buildings end up that kind of general shape because I like the radial symmetry.
Yep. Okay, so it's kind of like the bottom. You're going to be able to explore more or less.
Yeah. Have you been
freely.
in a building before? Okay, you can navigate this one, but there's hazards in there, whatever.
Yeah, and then
traps. I haven't even thought about traps.
You don't need to have traps. So I've got mixed feelings about traps because
I think traps are just cool. Like they're a trope in Dungeons and Dragons for a reason.
Yeah. So what you don't want traps to be is the. Did I succeed on my perception check or not?
Yeah.
Yes, no. If no, then you hurt and you take damage.
Yeah.
Or just something bad happens to me. Or like there needs to be more to a trap. So like there should be a trap in a fight. So like like the smothering rug that you guys fought, which like a bunch of stuff in that first room.
Well, I'm trying to think of like, is there an opportunity to like put a thematic and appropriate trap somewhere? I think if you go over the ceiling, absolutely, you're gonna fall through. Maybe.
Yeah. And don't think of trap as like a zombie like reaching an arm through a hole could be a trap, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So it's just something that's going to be surprising them and isn't going to be solved by just roll initiative, throw down, right?
I wonder if there's a catacomb below this place, like in the religious vaults that are on like the blueprint 1.0.0.1. And then like occasionally there's like a zombie hand that like flails its way up through the floorboards.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think that is kind of.
I think that would be appropriate
reaching.
for a different. I think that'd be appropriate for a different kind of
proud.
Dungeon. I am proud of you, Greg. Okay, yeah. So we'll save that for.
Well, you have a bunch of incorporeal monsters, right?
Yeah.
Like they go through the wall and get you.
Yeah. Okay. So traps, I'm gonna go with like probably not, but that's not to say like if I think of something, like I'll put it in there. But like the place wasn't taken over long enough before to like have a lot of traps.
So
like you've already got one with that puzzle.
Yeah, like I like the idea of like you can fall through the roof. I think that's good.
I think that's
I don't really think that there's any others, and
maybe part of a falling roof. Or something.
and my checklist I don't have traps just because I don't think that they're necessary, right? But I think they basically fit under environmental hazards too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we've got the fear of heights environmental hazard,
which is going to be dope.
Yeah. Okay, we got different paths. Someone to talk to.
I think that'll be the ghosts, or perhaps like an actively like maybe the person who gets flung off the roof, like they watch it happen and he like drops in front of them and like as he's dying of all of his broken bones, then no, he should already be dead. I'd probably say the ghosts.
Yeah. I think having that happen right in front of them feels a little bit like what's the word I'm looking for? Contrived. Yeah. Yeah, I totally like I really like the idea that the ghosts are around there. And so in this version of the game, is just touching ghosts bad?
If you end your turn in them, then they take 10 points of damage, or you both take 10 points of damage. I don't know that there's something that is.
Maybe you just make them bad. Maybe you just make touching ghosts bad. Yeah, who cares what it says in the monster manual? And maybe
you
like
just get frostbite.
Yeah, like maybe there's a ghost in the way, and it's weeping and it's like muttering to itself, and it's talking just loud enough that you can understand what it's saying, and maybe you can talk it out of the way, and you can ask it like, hey, what the hell is going on here? What's going on? or like a couple of them. I like the
Yeah.
idea. Like maybe you come across
Should have a romantic subplot. A couple died together.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
I like
Maybe
the
it was a
idea of
government official and
I like
his
the corrupt.
secretary.
I like the corrupt official. His ghost being alive, or his ghost being there, and but like not very cognizant and helpful. Like kind of just like like doesn't get that he's dead. Like
Yeah.
what's going on, and is kind of like stuck in a loop in his office.
Yeah, and his memory perhaps is corrupted to the point where like, I mean, he was obtuse when he was alive, and now he's just obtuse and forgetful now that he's dead.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, there was something important, like there was something I needed.
Or no, well, he could be stuck in like, it's like, oh, this place, he could be like, the building's being attacked, it's being attacked, like I need to grab my things, and he's constantly going through trying to grab his things, like we're under attack, like he's like, the players come in, he's like, help me find this stuff, and and then as they get in the way, then he starts hurting them by accident, basically. So like, not intentionally, so it kind of more like, oh, do you go right next to the ghost? Okay, we'll roll a dex save. Oh, you got that.
Yeah,
something
you
like
take
that.
Roll 1 point of cold damage or whatever.
Get a little more than that.
Whatever, 1d4 of cold damage. Like it's one of those things where it's like it's not necessary to like hurt them like that.
If this is my opinion.
Yeah.
If you want to like, if you're gonna put something that is a threat in anything, either it needs to be meaneful or it shouldn't be a threat.
I think that I think it depends
it's
on
like
what it's there for.
So like I would say, at least my opinion is like, oh, you roll a d4 of damage. Like nah, you just don't take damage. That's my opinion, at least. That's how I think about it. But I like the idea. Personally, I would have, because maybe as a theme, I make dangerous things. I would have like
Greg's in it for a shitty death.
I'm not a shitty death. I'll like. If Ian dies, it's gonna be sweet. My
character's gonna go in an existential crisis.
Make it sweet if he dies. All right.
Oh my god.
So, but yeah, like I if you want touching the ghost to be a threat, then I think all the ghosts in the entire place should be a threat. And now you're in this different challenge of you're trying to occupy the same space as this ghost of this government official. Like you're trying to search through his papers, and you don't want to just like murk him, right?
Yeah.
You're like, maybe we should just murk him.
Yeah. I'm thinking, what if I take
like
a note
my thought
out
is
of...
like make it a D10.
Oh jeez.
You gotta teach him a lesson.
Yeah, and I guess it gives him a reason to just like smite the ghost in general. But I'm also thinking about taking a note out of is it? No, it's not Majora's Mask. What is the one with the moon crashing into the town? I forget.
Majora's Mask.
That is Majora's Mask, isn't it?
I don't know.
Yeah. In any case, and like the people you talk to are like the 7 stages of grief or something.
Yep.
Which, by the way, are like kind of bullshit. Like everyone grieves differently. Putting a template on it makes people feel like they're like grief isn't valid, or like they're not a real human being because they're not grieving the same way that everyone else is supposed to grieve. And rant. But maybe I'll put a few different people who are like, bargaining, acceptance, that kind of a thing, where it's like, no, I'm not dead. Like, I can't be dead. I'll do anything in order to come back. And then one person who's just like, so this is what it's like.
I maybe you don't want to go with this, but I like the idea of a lot of them not like they don't realize they're dead and they're caught in the moment right before their death, because then you can give a lot of like if it's someone who's going through the different stages of grief, then like, okay, it's like a character study of this person, right? And maybe you can like get information out of them. But if there's someone stuck in the moment of them dying, you can try to get information out of them, and like you have to be clever, right? You come up to them, they're like, like the players, like the ghost is like, oh no, we're gonna all like some terrible things are happening, and they have to be like, what's going on? I just got tell me what's happening here. Like you have to try to get the information out of the ghost. I like that idea. And then you can have them in different stages. Like you could have the different personalities, like the different stages of grieving in each of those different ghosts, where it's not like they're dead, but they're seeing their imminent death and they're like, oh, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
That's my thought. You don't have to go with
it.
No,
I think that's a cool thing too, because they probably, they've been dead at this point for like 2 months, which, in canon time is about 100 days.
Yeah.
110 days, I suppose.
Are these 24-hour days?
They're 24-hour days.
Oh, all right. I'm giving you shit.
So there's that. More on the checklist. What do we got?
Bringing it up. Boo. Okay, so something to experiment with. So that's, I mean,
so give me an example.
I would say that the puzzle door, really.
Okay.
I would say
gotcha.
that if you go with the that sort of undead seal, not be like being there and having there actually be like a way for you to get through with like undead essence or getting a ghost to like help you through or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would fit experimenting with.
Yeah. Okay. So there's that. And now we just got a flowchart?
Something the players probably won't find.
Yep. Yeah, it's Warhammer.
We got environmental hazards, which is, I don't really like puzzle trick RP challenge because I think that's sort of covered by other ones.
Mm-hmm.
But environmental hazards, we got the fear of heights. So now, after basically having those set pieces written down, now we assign them to
flowchart,
to these
right?
different flowcharts.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So now we entrance, exits, hallways, hubs, dead ends, or reoccurring. Let's call that reoccurring. Basically, so we just want to assign a lot of those set pieces to those things. So, or figure out if we realize we don't have something there. So, is there anything special about the entrance when you come in? Is there a particular visage you want them to see, or like an encounter that you have?
Right now, not particularly. Like this whole place is, it's got like magical darkness throughout it. And so they're gonna have to either, pull out this lantern with a flame to kind of like, break the cloud or the mist or whatever in order to, see around. And so right now it's just like real fucking dark. Like you just can't see anything.
Okay.
And so maybe there's like, spooky sounds or something going off in the background. Maybe they can hear like weeping. And that's just like one of those ghosts. And so it'd be like an experience. I don't have anything really that's guarding the door because that was Hecarim.
You don't need anything guarding the door. It can just be like, what's it like coming inside? What's the first thing that you experience?
I think the complete and utter darkness, and then also like the weeping echoing through the halls. And then maybe occasionally the you can hear the scuttling of bones across the floor or whatever.
Yeah.
And probably like the creaking of the wood, like this place is like mostly silent, so you can kind of like hear the building like shifting with the wind or whatever.
Yeah.
And like probably the wind howling over the top of like some of all the windows in this place are also open, by the way. It's like a cultural thing. It's like you don't close the windows because that keeps the good spirits from coming in. Whatever. And so probably like the howling of the wind past the windows.
If you want to go on a trip, look up the fresh air movement.
Oh god.
Which talks about basically people thought that it was good to have, people thought fresh air was really good for you. Like they thought it was like a healthy thing, right?
I'm not gonna say they're wrong.
And so like people thought like you could get tuberculosis from kind of like being in a shut up room, right? So you would have, no joke, like open air classrooms, which is really popular, and you'd have open air classrooms in the middle of winter in like a proper Midwest winter. So there's just like a picture that I've seen of all these kids like so bundled up, sitting at desks, just out in the open with just snow around them.
Nope. Just like you cut a hole in the ceiling. That's
truth is stranger than fiction.
God, you're right. Okay, so in any case, yeah. So probably like weeping, creaking of the house or creaking of the building, and like scuttling of bones across the floor.
So any other entrance or exits that you have in mind? Like obviously there's a whole like falling off the building, or like, you know, or like, hey, you get on the roof and you jump off to the side. But is there any other kind of like, is there a back door equivalent, or like any other entryways to this place? Like any other egress points like you would normally have in a building?
I don't know what they are. There's probably like 2 other ones. Like,
and they don't have to
on
be,
the other
they don't
side
have
of
to be
the
special,
place.
but just like, hey, here's another place that you can get in.
Yeah.
Right. Another door like you would actually have in a real building.
Yeah. I think on, you know, the west side of this building, there's probably a similar door, but likely smaller, and maybe a few like emergency
like
exits.
a servant entrance.
Yeah. And then, you know, there's probably like an exit like down through the basement somewhere. That's like, you know, your secret entrance and exit. And then maybe an occasional equivalent of an emergency exit door in some of the offices.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Or, I mean, they may just be like a large window, something
Yeah.
like that. So is there anything that you want to be basically a hallway? Anything that is like, this is something that's going to be in between 2 other places?
I think there is.
So there's probably like staircase, like, you know, spiral staircase thing, you know, you go, stuff like that.
I think the government center, I'm trying to think if this is 2 levels or 1 level, or like maybe it's, you know, 1 level and then like it kind of like tier cakes up a little bit, and then, you know, there's a courtyard, and then the spire in like the center of the courtyard.
Depends on how many rooms you want, how much you want to plan out.
I think aesthetically I want there to be a 2nd level, and so yeah, there are some like staircases and stuff.
But I mean, also like a staircase like in the spire, right?
There's staircases like in the spire, but also, you know, that lead up to the 2nd floor, like the inner ring 2nd floor. And there's, so I think there's, you know, offices on the outside.
There should be splatted bodies like falling off the tower or thrown off.
Yeah.
In a sacrifice. In the courtyard too.
Oh yeah, and like flayed. There are flayed bodies whose souls were literally ripped out and fed to the mist.
Yeah.
And you know, and then they become like the irretrievable souls that you fight as shadows or whatever. And so I think there's going to be one big long hallway that kind of encircles this whole thing, right between the outer ring of offices and the inner ring of offices. And then, you know, occasionally you have hallways that connect the big ring hallway to the courtyard, and also like stairways that go up to the 2nd floor.
Is there any of the set pieces in mind that you want to have a lot of things be able to connect to? Anything that is like in your mind as hubs?
The courtyard, I think, is going to be the biggest hub that's around the spire.
Yeah. And then anything that you're gonna go to this place and you're only gonna have any dead ends, any place that you're gonna go to, and then really the only option is to turn around. So in my mind, like the reliquary in the basement would be one. And just if people are wondering why I have these categories, it's literally just to help me map out how I'm putting this, because I put a big emphasis on like the actual map and layout of the dungeon. I find that really helpful.
Yeah, and I think it's important to make sure that it's like reasonably realistic. Otherwise, you know, it's a Mario dungeon. That's like the layout of this thing doesn't really make any sense. And if you're trying to have a world with, you know, verisimilitude, you gotta make sure that some of that stuff like actually does make sense. Like this was a functioning building before it was turned into a dungeon. So dead ends, the reliquary. I mean, each of the offices is like its own dead end, unless you feel like hopping out of the window. Yeah. Especially like 2nd floor, like, you know, that's just an extra donut up there. You're not actually going to go anywhere. But I think maybe there's a part of this building that is completely collapsed, where it's like, if you enter and you go to, you know, direction A, eventually it'll just be like rubble, and like maybe you like can't get there, and maybe if you go all the way around the other side, then it like exits into the you know, instead of it being trapped by rubble, it's actually just like an empty thing. It's like open. The walls are gone, it's open to the outside. Totally.
Okay. And then is there any sort of thing that you want to see multiple times in a lot of different places in there?
So dead bodies for sure.
Mm-hmm.
There's also this thing that I invented. I'm going to call it a prismatic lantern. I think a big theme with, especially this area, like the spirits, and just, yeah, I mean, mainly like spiritual stuff. It's going to be like rainbows, music, and good smells, right? And so I'm going to take wind chimes, incense burners, and cool crystal chandeliers, and I'm going to make them into like one little decoration that, a government official or just anyone in general should have hanging in their window.
Yeah.
So like as the wind blows through, as the sun shines through, and you also have it like the incense lit, like you get the good smells from the incense. The sun shines through these like different, crystal prisms or whatever, and kind of like scatters light into like a cool disco bill or disco ball mini rainbows thing going on. And then they also clink against each other like a wind chime. And so, that's going to be something that they find in offices pretty frequently.
Valuable? I mean, it's a bit mercenary to take all of them, but
yeah, I think they do. Like, they are valuable. They're like not uncommon. Like it'd be like a, like if, I think they would have like inherent value. And like, the ones that belong to the highest.
Oh yeah, like people put money into them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like
you got your silver chamber pot. So like,
yeah, exactly. It'd be something similar to that. It's like, you have a planter outside, or you have a really nice planter, or it's like you've got, I don't know, I'm trying to like a fence. No, that's not a good example either. I don't know. Yeah. So there's like the basic model is still like inherently valuable, but it's not like expensive, but like you can jazz that shit up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, they can be valuable. And there's probably going to be like, shattered ones, maybe some that are still like hanging in the windowsill, like still clinking.
Now, next part, I don't really know if we can do it on the podcast because it's visual. You're literally drawing out this flow chart where you're beginning with the, you have the entrances and exits, and you're like, all right, now how are all these things connecting? How are, like, I know I need to have this thing. And then now what are the things I want to have in between them? Then you draw out that flow chart, that you kind of have an idea of like how you have to position things next to each other. And then you draw your map. If it's, if it's like a ruined building or a ruined sort of thing, which, is pretty common, then what I'll do is I'll kind of draw out like, hey, this is what this place should have looked like when it was brand new. And then I'll add in the collapses and the additions.
Yeah,
and
you like erase some arrows, draw some new arrows.
Yeah, well, I'll draw the actual map of like, this was the original. And then it's like, oh, now there's a cave in here, which prevents the players from being able to use this path because I don't want them to have another path here. And now, that's something that I would do when I'm drawing this out, to like make the, to have like a real location like that makes sense match to a contrived dungeon kind of path.
Yeah.
So that's what I would do next. And so,
yeah. And I think like just in general, it's, I've got a fairly direct path, right? If you go like across the top of this thing, like you're gonna have to scale a couple stories and then rappel down, and then you find the spire, which you can take two options: one, climb up the side; two, go through the center. And then you have a couple different set pieces or whatever in there. But like if a person goes inside of this ruined building, like there are a lot of arrows pointing to a lot of different things. But eventually, you just get to the courtyard, which is, your central hub. And then the courtyard will bring you to either, on the outside of the spire or inside the spire.
Yeah. So
cool.
I think we're done.
I think
with
that's
the
kind
podcast.
of it. Yeah.
We've been going for a long time, so it fits.
And this latest week, we learned that, about 3 hours of content is what we can upload per month without going over our allotted data from Libsyn. So
yeah, and so we're
basically
gonna make
for
it,
that.
We're gonna make it We're under an hour and a half. So
So
let me know if you felt this exercise is helpful if you actually do like the flow charting and stuff like
no, I
that.
think I'm gonna do that tonight when I get home, or possibly tomorrow.
If anyone listening to this gives it a try, let me know what you think.
Yep.
Because it's still experimental for me. Like I made something very small using this method, and I'm sort of in the process of making something big. Like I'm just writing with this big dungeon. I'm just writing down set pieces. Like I literally have level 1, level 2, level 3, and I'm like, what are things here? What are things here? What are things here?
Yeah, I think I'm going to, do all this and then probably take a picture and upload it to like a Google Drive folder. And I'll put that Google Drive link in the description.
Yeah.
So, so that you guys can have references, because the best thing for world builders are references, I think.
Yeah. So, thank you for listening through Greg
telling Daron how to build his dungeon.
yeah. And hopefully providing helpful advice. And yeah, let us know what you think.
All right. Fare thee well.
You have a good day.
And don't forget links and stuff like lorefoundry.com,
thelorefoundry@gmail.com.
Please. Yeah, it's been a while. That's life. If you like what we're doing, let us know. If you don't like what we're doing, let us know as well, I guess. And yeah, I think that's it. I'm not really one for calls to action.
Send us an email. That's my call to action.
Okay.
Send us a message.
Right. We don't make money off of this.
Actually, legitimately, send us a topic that you want us to go over.
Yeah,
Greg's
really running dry. I think I've still got a few that I want to do, but
I mean,
most of those are just setting.
It's more like I'll have something,
mm-hmm.
In like a couple weeks. I'll think of something. I'll be like, oh yeah, we'll talk about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just I'm not gonna be able to pull it from the ether. It has to, I must be inspired. My muse must talk to me. That's how it is.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.
Goodbye. Been getting really good at cracking my back.
I'm pretty good at cracking Courtney's back.
I need to get good at cracking my neck, because I want to be able to just do like the, because I think that's really cool. I think it's cool. That's it. I
don't think it's bad for you, but it can't be incredibly good for you.
Oh.
I mean, I've been cracking my knuckles a while.
I want to do it as to be I'm not going to intimidate someone in real life, right? But I want to be able to do it to intimidate someone as a joke, or to act it.
Okay. Well,
you can just be like,
I guess that works. Is there a strategy behind it?
I have no idea.
Is there a certain
I haven't looked into it.
How to crack your own neck without using your hands.